Are you looking how to build an electrical setup for your camper? We build ours for full-time overlanding. It keeps us cooking, charging and camping off-grid. We wanted a system that is simple, reliable and modular, and therefore possible to replace or repair the necessary bits on the road. We didn't go too fancy or over-engineered it, just practical power for daily life on the road. In this video you can see what we built, how our electrical setup is performing, and we share our lessons learned.
We wanted to do induction cooking. We got a lot of scorn from everyone saying that it's unnecessary and you will just pull the batteries flat and everything. But we really wanted to not be dependent on gas. We wanted to be able to cook inside safely, and this has been really good for us.
When we started, we didn't know much. A lot of YouTube, a lot of reading and second guessing and conflicting advice. But eventually, we just went for it. We had to start somewhere.
And this is what we built in the end. And in this video, we're going to show you how we built it, what components we have, and how they fit together. So we have the 12-volt system for things like the fridge, lights, USB charging, and we have the 220 to 230 volt AC for the induction charging laptops, etc.
At the heart of our electrical system are two 100 amp hour lithium batteries, and we hid them in here.
So the two batteries are connected in parallel, so it keeps it a 12-volt system. If it was in series, it would have been a 24-volt system. And note that the exit from the negative and the exit from the positive to the system is from different batteries. So that makes sure that you don't have one battery that gets more use than the others, and it keeps your battery health good. The fuse closest to the source so that it quickly burns out before you can reach anything else. And these wires between the batteries, these ones as well, to the system, try and keep them the same length. So this same length as that, the whole thing the same length as the whole black wire to the bus bars. The lithium batteries are charged in two ways, by the alternator via the starting battery and by our solar panels. Let's start first with the alternator charging. In the Defender, the starter battery sits here under the seat and it's always full of dust. And you can see we used every available space for storage of spares, etc. But we ran the cables from the starter battery, this is the red, this is the black, with a fuse as close as possible to the source. We ran this through the seat box, and then it goes out of the vehicle underneath and then up into the vehicle again. I made some self-made grommets of rubber to keep the dust out. And then we take the shortest possible route through the kill switch for the DC-DC directly into the DC-DC. So, what is a DC-DC?
The DC-DC charger sits between your starter battery and your leisure battery system. It's essential if you're running lithium batteries or if you have a vehicle with a smart alternator, since modern charging systems are still designed for lead-acid batteries. The DC-DC acts as a buffer and a protector. Lithium batteries can draw very high current, which can strain the alternator, so the charger limits and controls that flow. At the same time, it converts the alternator's variable output into the exact voltage and charging profile lithium batteries need.
We have the Orion Smart 12-volt 30 amp DC-DC charger. That means it can charge at a maximum of 30 amp. So from the output, it goes up through a fuse to the bus bars, and there's the negative line going back. We first had a circuit breaker like this in this position for the DC-DC. I would not recommend these circuit breakers because we thought that this thing was broken, because it would charge for a few seconds or a few minutes and then nothing happens and you can see the signal just dropping. Finally figured it out and it was the circuit breaker that was just overheating. Even though it's a 60 amp circuit breaker, it's overheating, switching off, and then you lose the signal. So just swapped it for a fuse. Everything goes to the bus bars. The bus bars are the central hub of all electricity going into and out of the batteries. So from here, the power is going into the bus bars, going out of the bus bars to the leisure batteries, charging the leisure batteries. Moving on to the second way of charging the batteries, we have the solar panels. We have two solar panels, a fixed one on the roof. It sits in between the two Alucab load bars, and we have a foldable solar panel from EcoFlow, and that we can move around if you're standing in the shade or just to optimize the sun. The fixed panel is 200 watt. The foldable panel is a 220 watt. We had to try and choose the capacities of the two solar panels to be almost the same, so that you have a more efficient combination of powers, more efficient use of power, because we are connecting them in parallel and then combining the power to in the end go to the MPPT that charges. The foldable solar panel is connected here through the window into a Brad Harrison plug, which then feeds through the channel of the Defender to the front. The fixed solar panel comes in through a feed through at the back of the Alucab Icarus, the roof conversion, and it runs through this channel at the top and comes out here. And the foldable solar panel supply comes through the Defender inner channel here. They first each go through their own circuit breaker for safety. Here we can also then switch them on and off separately, either for safety or to test whatever is necessary. Then the outputs from there are combined, effectively putting it in parallel through a YMC4 combiner, two of them. Then only one black wire, one red wire is coming out of there, which with the combined outputs from both solar panels, that goes into the MPPT, of which we have the Victron 30 amp MPPT. To be complete, what exactly is a MPPT?
And why do you need it? Solar panels don't produce steady power. Their voltage jumps around with changing sunlight. An MPPT, which is maximum power point tracking, constantly finds the sweet spot and converts that fluctuating energy into a smooth, efficient charge for your batteries. Also note that lithium batteries will need a lithium-compatible controller or MPPT, and the controller should have a maximum amp output greater or equal to that of the combined panels.
From the output of the MPPT, here where it says battery, we go up through a fuse as well. I also replaced the circuit breaker with a fuse to the bus bars, from where it then charges the laser batteries. One more component that's part of the input or the charging side, actually in between charging and distribution, is the smart shunt we have from Victron, 500 amp smart shunt, and these monitoring lines are connected to the starter battery and the leisure batteries, from where it then can see what goes in and out from where. To be honest, it is not something that we use a lot. We can monitor the data on our phones on the Victron app, but we don't look at it a lot. So I think if you like understanding your system and you need to do fault finding, it's very handy, but it's not a daily item of use for us.
We just covered how we charge our system, and the heart of the system, the batteries. And now we're going to move to the distribution of power.
As we mentioned, the bus bars are the central hub of receiving and sending out power. It receives power from the batteries, but from the battery it first goes through a fuse as close as possible to the source. Then it goes through a kill switch, which we can actually access here even with the box cover on. And then with these lines it powers the bus bars. From the bus bars we then send power to various systems. For instance, a line that goes through a fuse to an output for our compressor, a Brad Harrison output, which sits here. And if we have to pump up the tires, we just take it out, connect it to there, and we have power on the compressor. Other places, we go to the distribution box, the fuse box. So it's a little box with fuses already inside. You can have one input, one output from the bus bars, and that feeds all these terminals. From here we can go to the fridge, our USB points next to the bed. We have our USB points on the dash. We have the water pump, USB points at the back of the cab, and the awning lights. So this all-in-one system gives you the terminals as well as the fuses for safety.
We now move on to 230 volt alternating currents, and after that we'll share with you some lessons learned and some things we might want to improve in the future.
To produce alternating current from our 12 volt direct current system, we go through our Phoenix smart inverter. It's a 2000 watt inverter from Victron, and it takes a 12 volt input. From the bus bars we run first through a 150 amp fuse for safety, and that then runs directly as an input to the inverter. From the inverter we move to another safety device, actually two, a RCD and a MCB. The RCD is a residual current device and the MCB is a miniature circuit breaker. The RCD will see if there's any imbalance between the live and the neutral line, so that will protect us if we maybe touch something, one of the devices that we use, and something is running through us, so that will hopefully pick it up and protect us. And then it goes through the circuit breaker, which just would switch off if there's an overload or a short circuit. Both are rated at 25 amp, and that's enough for the devices that we use. So from these safety devices we just run directly to normal wall plugs. We have one here between the seats, the South African type plug, and another European type plug, and the same at the back there by our drop down table where we can cook. And the reason why we have such a very big and heavy inverter, the 2000 watt, is because we wanted to do induction cooking. So we got a lot of scorn from everyone saying that it's unnecessary and you will just pull the batteries flat and everything. But we really wanted to not be dependent on gas, and we wanted to be able to cook inside safely, and this has been really good for us. The smallest induction cooker that we could find was the Snappy Chef Traveler. It's 1200 watt, and this was then the best option for us to also be able to do other things maybe if necessary while cooking. So what did we learn and what would we do differently next time? One aspect we really did learn a lot about was speccing wires, knowing what thickness to use. So we did, in the end, for the thinner DC wires going to our devices and USB points, we did stay according to spec. We would look at if everything on that line would be drawing power, then what type of amps would be going through that line, and we spec the line thickness according to that. For the very thick DC lines, we must say that we did not follow the very conservative specs. That was just after a lot of discussions with Overland vehicle installers, as well as reading on forums, etc, etc, and then we made a choice to have some smaller wires going from the batteries to our system. Otherwise it would have just have been so thick and we wouldn't be able to put it in this small space. Another point that had some different answers online sometimes, and as well as different answers from the installers in the 4x4 world, was what type of grounding is necessary. In the end, I went quite conservative. There's a very thick grounding wire from our the negative DC bus bar to the chassis. There's also a grounding wire from the inverter to the chassis. I go through the floor panel here, I go down to the chassis, cleaned up the chassis section and bolted it onto there. I think both at formal grounding points. And then something that made us feel very stupid, which is now very, very obvious, is that we would switch off the main kill switch and we would still be seeing power everywhere. Do note that if you do follow this type of setup with the bus bars and the DC-DC and the MPPT directly connected to the bus bars, if you have sun or if the car is switched on, you will still see power when the main switch is off. So I don't have anything in between to switch it all off with one switch. If we want to do that, we need to trip the circuit breakers of the solar and the kill switch of the DC-DC as well. As we said, we just needed to start somewhere. You will see that with the materials we used were sometimes just offcuts, leftovers, things I found in my dad's garage. So there are some things in our box that we would change. The materials we used, like this was MDF, it's not the best thing to use, and this was sort of just yeah, it was just put together in the best way possible, the quickest way possible, but it gives us a closed box, or rather closed. At least we can't touch anything. It provides us safety, but it does provide air to flow in from underneath and air to flow out from the top. What would we do differently next time? Maybe just an easier removal of the box. But the biggest thing for us, and just as people told us, the battery power that we need for the induction cooker is quite a lot. And for us it's fine, we can manage it. If we don't drive a lot, we just need to manage what we charge. We need to move the solar panel around a lot to try to keep the batteries at quite a high voltage. But it would be nicer if we had a higher battery capacity, maybe 400 amp hours. I think that would be just nice, so that we can stand somewhere for a while and not worry too much about what we want to do and cook. Thanks for watching. We hope you found this helpful, and we did a whole video on the room tour or the build, so you can see where this really fits in. And there's also a whole playlist on our build, so for some laughs or inspiration, go check it out. We'll put the links below. Thanks for watching.
On Patreon you can find a full list of all items we bought and installed for our overlanding setup, including everything electrical. You can download it for free, but you're more than welcome to join us there and become part of our overlanding adventure. In 2 weeks you'll see us back on the road. And not just a road, but a pretty insane attempt, especially right after a breakdown in one of Kenya's national parks. Subscribe if you don't want to miss it. Hope to see you then.